someone has officially hired PI Steve Fischer to look into the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. And it's probably not who you think it is. It is the homeowner, Malden Trifunovic. And I had reported this 2 days ago after speaking to Malden, but he would not disclose to me who the PI was that he hired, although I had an idea based on some of my previous conversations. And yesterday, or last night, I should say, October 15th, I heard from Malden and he said, I'm ready to tell people, I'm ready to make it public that I hired Steve Fischer to look into the death of Celeste Rivas Hernandez as it relates to my home, the home that David occupied. It was being rented out by his manager, Josh Marshall. Malden Trifunovic is very disturbed by all of this, and he's even more disturbed that his home seemed to be at the center of this case because the LAPD searched it. They got a search warrant, and we still don't know exactly what they found. They're still going through all of the evidence that they took from that house. We know based on reports, they took computers. They, had bags of things that they were taking out of the house. I mean, they were looking for blood evidence. Who knows what they found? But Malden, he wants answers for his family. And I can imagine that this is a very awkward and uncomfortable situation for them because, they don't live in the area at all. So again, this was confirmed yesterday that Steve is working with Malden or working for Malden. And I reached out to Steve to try to get some more information. He is on the West Coast. It is 9 a.m. here on the East Coast. So I hope to put out another article today on lamag.com with whatever Steve wants to share. And I think my biggest concern at this point, because Steve has been a really wonderful source of information on this case, because, we're not getting information anywhere else at this point, I'm afraid that he won't be able to share as much since he's actually now hired by somebody who's, I guess you could say, involved in the case. I guess because it's Malden's home, sure, he's involved. I don't want to put that on him, but you guys know what I'm trying to say. So we will stay on top of that. I do have a direct connect to Steve Fischer. Again, he is an incredible PI. Steve is the one that was able to access the tow yard workers. He spoke to neighbors in the Hollywood Hills around the home. I mean, he found the tickets that David's Tesla got when it was abandoned, sitting on the street for Lord knows how long, well over a month. So Steve is on it. And I know that he does most likely have some information that is new to a lot of people. He just can't share it. I think I also broke the news, and Steve allowed me to do this, that he has a picture of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a proof of life picture that she was alive in 2025. And I don't think any other outlets have that information or had that information. Unfortunately, he cannot show us this picture yet, but I found that to be super helpful for the timeline so we could try to figure out when was Celeste last seen alive. So again, we will stay on top of that. And I do want to play for you TMZ's video or interview, I guess you could say. It's like 30 seconds long with Nathan Hochman, the Los Angeles district attorney. And of course, he is super tight-lipped about the Celeste case. I mean, they just asked him, are you closer to finding an arrest or are you closer to moving in on a suspect? Why is David not a suspect? They had to ask these questions. And it's always interesting to see how these guys react. But it's also like, I mean, it's almost a rehearsed, like, it's an open investigation, yada, yada. I mean, we know they have to say that. But anyway, I'll play this quick clip for everybody, so we're all on the same page.
Where are we at with this Celeste Rivas Hernandez investigation? A lot of people are interested in this.
It is currently under investigation.
Is David a suspect? Are there any suspects that you guys have on a list that you keep in tight to vest? Is there?
So we don't discuss suspects or the points in a continuing investigation. when and if that case is presented to the DA's office and we make a decision on it, I'll make sure you're one of the first to know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So the one thing I got out of that is the whole when and if this case is presented to the DA's office, which, I mean, that could indicate that it has not been presented yet. We don't know, but it could be a good indication that they just, it hasn't come across their desk yet. They don't have enough information for an arrest. And I know to most people, if when you say that, you're like, wait, not enough information or, information for an arrest. That's crazy. There was a body found in David's Tesla. I mean, yeah, it sounds crazy. It's a lot more complicated than that. But let's just pivot to Mark Sanchez. And I want to give just a couple new pieces of information that I found on his current judge and the old judge, Jennifer Prince Harrison, who recused herself from the case. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out if there was any type of connection. And I think I mentioned that I was going to do this. And all I could find connection-wise, which really means nothing, is that Judge Harrison went to Indiana University, the law school, and so did Perry Toll's civil attorney and also Mark Sanchez's defense attorney, James Voiles Jr. They all went to Indiana University, but that means nothing. That happens all the time. And it's very common for lawyers in Indiana to have gone to IU. And also the current judge, Judge James Osborne, he also went there as well. So I feel like that's the only commonality I found so far, but it's not really a big deal. I will say, I think that Mark Sanchez would have preferred Judge Harrison because she allegedly is a soft on crime judge. I shouldn't say allegedly. I found one specific instance because it was so recent. It was literally October 3rd, 2025, where she sentenced a man who was involved in a high-speed chase. He was running from police or obviously fleeing from police, and he was going 140 miles an hour, and he killed 3 people during this car chase and this crash. One was his own brother, one was his own cousin, and the other was a woman in another car who was 21 years old, had just gotten married. So sad. And prosecutors, they wanted 25 years for him, and they eventually got that down to 15 years. He was born with this guy was born with like a brain injury or something like that, and he didn't have a criminal history. So they're like, okay, 15 years, whatever. Well, Judge Harrison ended up giving him 2 years. So it was 2 years and 7 years of home detention. So that really caused people to just be up in arms. They were like, this is insane. This is not justice. And it definitely caused some local politicians to sort of lash out at Judge Harrison. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, Mark Sanchez, he probably would have preferred her because she seems a bit more lenient. There was also another case where she threw out a really crucial piece of evidence involving a search warrant. She felt like the search warrant wasn't, obtained in the right way. So whatever they found, law enforcement in this search, she tossed that out. And that was a really bad move. I don't know I was reading about this briefly. And so basically that case was appealed to the Supreme Court, and they won their appeal based on a bad call from her. And I'm speaking in lay terms, I'm speaking generally, but yeah, these were just 2 instances where I was like, ooh, okay, it sounds like Sanchez, not that, we want him to get preferential treatment. I'm just saying, yeah, she seems a bit soft on crime. And then lastly for today, I want to just mention that Diddy, there was a filing yesterday, a judgment filing, where they listed mandatory conditions of kind of what has to happen after he is released from prison, after he does his 50 months or whatever that is. So he has 5 years of supervised release. And, it's a lot of these general stipulations. He obviously can't hang around convicted felons. He has to get drug tested. He has to notify his probation officer, if he is about to move or travel somewhere. He has to work full-time, 30 hours a week. He cannot have any communication with any of the, quote, victims in this case. No Jane, no Cassie. And I was like, oh yeah, him and Cassie, they don't really talk. But Jane, I was thinking, oh wow, I feel like that might be hard, because I kind of felt like they still had a bit of a relationship that was lingering during the trial. There was a question, I guess, I was a little confused at first. I thought perhaps he would have to register as a sex offender, but he does not, because the box wasn't checked off on his judgment sheet. But, I asked a few people about this, a few lawyers, and they're like, no, if it's not checked off, he most likely doesn't. But I did see a couple reports of some random media outlets saying that he did. So I felt like that was weird. I'm going to go with the court docs. I'm going to go with that and say he does not have to register as a sex offender. But he does have to cooperate in the collection of DNA testing as directed by the probation officer. So whenever they want any of his DNA, for whatever reason, for testing purposes, he has to give it to them. Anyway, guys, that's all for this morning. That's my little daily update for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Again, don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, Los Angeles Magazine, and stay tuned. I will have, like I said, an article later today about Steve Fischer and what he is doing for Malden Trifunovic, the Hollywood Hills homeowner that owned the home that David occupied. Thanks again, and have a good